Yes, it's a very good afternoon to you. Welcome on in. It is In Conversation with myself, Alan Hennessy, and today I'm going to be talking to Mr. Mike Allton. Just to give you a little bit of background on Mike, Mike is an award-winning blogger, speaker, and author at the Social Media Hat and Blogging Brute, where he has been educating businesses and organizations on the best use of content marketing and reaching your target audience and converting them. He teaches his holistic approach to using social media, email marketing, and search engine marketing to drive traffic, generate leads, and convert those leads into sales. He's also the co-author of the book, The Ultimate Guide to Social Media Marketing. And guys, I would tell you, check that book out. He also wrote it alongside Jen Herman, Stephanie Liu, Amanda Robinson, and Eric Bruto. I think that's right. I'm probably going to get given out to for that, but however, but do check it out. We will put links to that as well in the show. And Mike also has a super brand new podcast called Marketing Hyperdrive, and we're going to be talking all about that. So without further ado, I think I will invite the man of the moment, as they say, up on to join us in. Hi, Mike. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Fantastic, Alan. Thank you for that really warm welcome. It's awesome to be here. It's awesome to be talking to friends across the pond. We can't see face to face, but at least we can do this once in a while, right?
Well, that's it. That's it. And I was only trying to work it out earlier on there. I know you have been on the Social Media Talks podcast with me, but it must be at least about a year and a half ago. It has to be at least that anyway. So you are one of our...
Well, everything feels like it was 10 years ago. So
it does, actually. It actually does. And that's the thing I did notice about sort of like people were talking. I was talking to someone the other day and they were actually only saying, oh, yeah, but you remember when we used to do that? And I went, that's a year ago. That's over a year ago since I actually was out. And I was out for a couple of drinks and a meal with friends of ours there just before Christmas, and I was saying, this is the first time I've been out in a year, and even at that, it was only for 2 hours type of thing. So I think we've lost all track of time, I suppose, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's been quite a crazy year, and I think it's going to stick with us for a little while longer. But look, we'll get there. So tell me, how has I suppose the COVID and at the moment been how with you? What is it? How are things with you? Are you getting on okay? And just sort of seeing from your point of view how it is. I know you're in the States, so but
yeah, I've been really fortunate, very blessed, because I was already working from home. I was already working remotely, for Agorapulse, a global company.
Yeah.
So there was zero change to my work. Zero change to my work environment. I already had a home office. We had the kids home, schooling remotely for a while, so that was a bit disruptive, but they're back in school. Their school is great. In fact, we just got a letter this morning from their principal that their COVID cases are very, very low. They've really not had any issues. Everyone's been safe there. So we've been really blessed.
Yeah. I think that's, I know especially from the last pandemic or the last sort of the last lockdown here in Ireland, I've heard of cases, but I hadn't heard about it from people that were close to us. But in this one, I think it's a lot more closer to us, and I think a lot more people are a lot more concerned, and they're a lot more vigilant in what they're doing, I suppose, as well. That's the other side of it, So I suppose, like, look, we're lucky in a sense, and I know myself and yourself from the business that we're in. I suppose the demand has probably got even more over the last couple of months because people are starting to do a lot of work online, and I've noticed it personally as well. But and there is I suppose a good side to that as well, and there's also a bad side. There's we're not connecting, we're not physically seeing each other, but thank God for the power of Zoom and StreamYard and all these fantastic platforms.
Absolutely.
So I suppose that a lot of people will know you from doing a lot of work online, and obviously, your website, the Social Media Hat, some always fabulous content. And if anyone doesn't or hasn't looked at it yet, that's the place to go. And then you also have the Blogging Brute, and I love that name, Blogging Brute. And of course, blogging is, I suppose, what sort of brought you to my attention many years ago. And since then, obviously, I've gotten to know you quite well. But I think that, you are the master at blogging. You have awards for it. So I suppose the blogging part of this, and I think it's a good time as well at the moment for people to be, talking about content and thinking about the content and writing blogs. So what would be your, I suppose, your tips for doing something like this?
Yeah, thanks. And I would say, first of all, because you mentioned, you pulled a line out of my bio about how I have a holistic approach. And I think that's really important. I don't lean in on one particular social network. I don't focus only on blogging. And while I don't want to overwhelm a business maybe who's new and really just getting started in online marketing, I do want to stress the fact that all these different areas, all these different tactics, strategies, however you want to look at them, they're important. And it's really a good idea to work on all of them at the same time if you can. So create blog content, try to optimize it for search engines, start an email list and begin communicating out to your community via email, and have a presence on all these different social networks, because all these things can then interchange and support each other. You kind of mentioned, you joked in the green room about how you're always seeing my stuff all over the place. The funny thing is, I don't actually write that often. I tend to publish once a week, sometimes not at all. And yet there's the perception that I'm everywhere. And that's because I've taken the time to create valuable content, be present on social media, and do shows like this. This is a really important aspect of online marketing that a lot of businesses overlook, is leveraging other people's audiences. So all that's kind of a backdrop to why should we blog today? What should we blog about? Some tips for blogging, as you asked. And I would say the first big tip that I always offer most small business owners and anyone who's trying to get into blogging or they've been struggling with blogging is to focus on writing about and sharing what you already know. A lot of people, they'll come into blogging and they know they want to create content for their business. They want to try to reach an audience, and they'll come up with topics to write about that require them to go do research. So whatever your business is, I like talking about box turtles for no particular reason. But suppose you want to write about box turtles and you've never really written about box turtles, you never really studied it, but for some reason that's part of your business. And so you want to write about habitats for box turtles. And you don't really know that much about habitats for box turtles. So you have to go out and figure out, what materials to use, what sizes, what to put inside the habitats, all these different elements that you don't already know. Well, now that's not really a blog post. That's really more of a research paper.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't want to read a research paper. I want to read a blog post. I want to know what you think, Alan. So what I usually advise people to do is to come up with the questions that their audience is already asking, whether it's customers or readers or viewers, whoever it is that you're trying to talk to as a business owner, as a blogger, whatever the case might be. What are those questions? Because you're probably already answering them on a regular basis. You might even have an FAQ on your site, those frequently asked questions that are always coming into you or your staff. If you've got a team, go to your sales team and ask them, hey, what are the questions you guys are getting every single day from prospects, and answer those. If you've got 10 of those in a list, that's 10 blog posts or 10 podcasts or 10 videos. Great place to start with your content.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. Like I always say that, your secret army, your secret marketing army is your staff, and they're the front line. They're the people that are on the front line. They're the ones that are actually answering the calls. So they are going to give you so much great information. Like I know we did it with a company where we had the receptionist have literally a little notepad, and every time someone called the office, we got it to write down what they were talking about, or what they asked about, what they inquired about, and not so much in detail, just like quick, whatever it may be, social media, it's Twitter, they were asking, whatever it may be. But what they done was then we correlated all of that information, and we said, okay, well, most of the calls are coming in from this piece. You know what I mean? They're looking for this type of service. So what they did is we started to write content for them whether that be social posts, but also through the form of long form content like a blog post that answered these questions. So it also gave the company the opportunity to say, well, look, instead of spending 20 minutes or half an hour on the phone call, they were able to direct them to the website where that content was and easily help them. So I thought, and we just came to the whole idea of this is saving time. And the company that the managing director even says, this is incredible. Why weren't we doing this 5 years ago? And I was saying, well, you weren't talking to me, but however, we won't go into that. But like that, I think that's so important. As you say, it's not to write a fact sheet. It's to write something that's people can understand and they can read and they can learn from it. And I think that's so important. Just there is a few people. So guys, if you are joining us today, let us know where you're joining us from. And also, if you're watching us live, do come in, say hello. I see we have a few people. We have our good friend Deb Mitchell is here. She's saying hi guys. Hiya Deb, how are you? Thanks for joining us today. And don't forget to check out her fantastic Twitter chat. Happens on a Thursday. Deb, you might pop the details as well into the chat, so we have that as well. Yvonne asks a very good question: is how does Mike find industry experts are coping with the lockdown, and what is the overall feeling talking to his colleagues?
That's a great question, Yvonne. I would say, from my perspective, in my industry, which is online marketing, from a business perspective, my colleagues seem to be coping very well. The people that I talk to, they found ways to grow their business. Many of them are busier than they've ever been. Maybe many of them found time over the past year where they had extra free time, so they invested that into projects like books and new shows and those kinds of things. I would say, from a negative impact perspective, the biggest issue for us has been the inability to travel. Certainly there's a segment of my colleagues who are used to speaking at events, and obviously that's been pretty much wiped off the board. So many of them have had to pivot dramatically. And then the rest of us have been, forced to not be able to travel and go to events. Like I'm a really good example. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and I don't have a lot of contacts locally. There aren't a lot of online marketers in the St. Louis, Missouri region. So most of my physical contact and the relationships that I've built with online marketers have been via events like Social Media Marketing World in San Diego or Content Marketing World in Cleveland, which we're not doing. So that's a struggle for us that's kind of interesting and unique somewhat to our industry. But otherwise, yeah, I think everyone's doing pretty well.
Yeah, and I think as well as that, like I know obviously people can't do as you say, the social media marketing world and all the other events that happen on a yearly basis, but I think a lot of it has been brought online, and I've seen a lot more, I suppose, social media heads and digital marketers adapting and using these these formats of the StreamYard and the live shows to be able to get their content out there, but also it's giving you an insight into the other side and actually getting to talk to these people that are online and that are available. So it's really, really, it's great, and it's educational and it's also entertaining. I know, like the Agorapulse, the Social Pulse Weekly and stuff like that, great shows. They're fantastic shows, and even only recently they're used on the Agorapulse, the Summit. And that was just incredible, just that so many fabulous speakers have the ability to jump on, and and you're very comfortable because you're in your own surroundings, they're in their own surroundings, but you're still able to interact like you would if you were face to face. I know there is, the physical contact is much better, but at the same token, if that's what we can do, so be it. It has to be done, but it's given a lot of people opportunities to get out and get up onto social media and to really start pushing out great content and helping people.
Yeah, and in fact, I was reading David Meerman Scott's book on standout virtual events, and he was talking about how when people go to real live events, they have those serendipitous moments where they meet people in the hallways, or they're able to come up to a speaker afterwards, And what that's triggering is this kind of the sense of personal space. Like if you know somebody, you're going to get up close to them within, they
Yeah.
say like within like a foot to 4 feet, right? And if you don't know somebody, you might be a little bit further away. And if someone's like 12 or 16 feet away, you don't even register really that they exist. Like if you're walking down a hallway and they're way on the other side of the hallway, you don't even register that they exist. So that physical proximity is one of the intangible kind of psychological benefits of being at a real live event. But when you're able to do a video call and you're able to actually talk back and forth and interact with the other person, and you're able to make eye contact and see them, it replicates a lot of that physical proximity in our brains. And so one of the things we're doing with Social Pulse Summit, particularly this quarter, is we're replicating a lot of that. We're giving people even more opportunities to engage with each other through one-to-one speed networking, sitting down at roundtable discussions, having Q&As and fireside chats with speakers, a lot more live speaking heads, rather than just that webinar where it's just like slides and you can't see anybody and you can't ask any questions. So we're doing what we can for sure to replicate that live event experience.
Yeah, and I think that's great because, like I know many years ago, I at the social media marketing summit here in Dublin, I had been following Ted Rubin, and then when I got to actually meet him in person, it was great, and we kept up the relationship. But since then, we have built on that, and we would talk on a regular basis, type of thing, and it's still now when if he's doing a live or something, I'd probably jump on, probably have a chat with him and stuff like that. And it's great to be able to interact. And I think, as you say, them fireside chats, they're great because they're very, they're really easy to be able to jump in and ask your questions and talk to the actual speakers or talk to the expert that's there as well. I do want to talk about a new project that you have started. You've joined us. You've eventually done it. Everyone's been asking you for years to do it. And I think you've just said, bit the bullet, and you said, right, I'm going to do it. I don't know whether that was due to timing or what, but you have now got a fantastic new podcast. And I would say to people, anyone that's around, do check Mike's podcast out. It's called Marketing Hyperdrive. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, you're right. People have been telling me for a long time to start a podcast. And I don't know if that's because I have a face for radio or if it's because they really, really wanted to consume my content through audio. I don't know. But yeah, that was something that I've been asked for a long time. And the timing was never quite right. The idea was never quite there. To say you should have a podcast is one thing, but okay, you have to have something to talk about, whether it's interviewing people or creating content on your own. And it just so happened that early in fourth quarter 2020, I restarted a newsletter. I'd always had email subscribers and I'd always sent emails, but I'd never committed to an actual newsletter where I said, okay, every week or every other week, I am going to send an email and it's going to look like this. So I kind of created this format, based it on what I'd seen work very, very well for Ann Handley and Christopher Penn and Chris Brogan, and combined elements that I liked from those and Stephanie Liu. And I started this Marketing Hyperdrive as a newsletter. And so every week I would send a letter followed by some news, a very, very typical format. And that seemed to go very well. I sent 12 of them through Q4 of 2020. By December, I was starting to think, you know what? This could be a podcast. So I spent the holidays taking those first 12 episodes, those issues, and recording me speaking them, got everything set up with Libsyn and the hosting and the graphics and the branding. And so by January, I was able to drop the first 12 episodes of the podcast. And now every single Sunday, everything goes out at once, the podcast, the email, and of course it's published on the web. So people can consume that content however they like. And it's just me sharing what I think that particular week. It's very much, I hesitate to say thought leadership because sometimes people are like, oh, why he thinks he's a thought leader. I'm not really putting it that way, but it is in a pure sense thought leadership. I'm not doing a lot of tactical training in most of these emails. Mostly it's me sharing some thoughts that are relevant to that particular thing, some lessons, some marketing lessons. Great example. We went to Disney World in August. We managed to slide in between lockdowns and had the most amazing experience. And one of the reasons we went around that time was because it was my youngest daughter's birthday. She was turning 6. And when you go to Disney World and it's your birthday, they give you a pin to wear that says it's your birthday so that everybody there can wish you a happy birthday. But they do it in a very smart way. They don't say it's my birthday or something like that. The pin says happy birthday, Emmy. And you write your name, Emmy, on there, which is not your name, my daughter's name. So that way, anyone that sees you simply has to read that pin and look at your face and smile and say, happy birthday, Emmy. So when we walked into Hollywood Studios one morning and the street as you walk in was lined with guys in white suits, the cast members, one and then another, and then all 12 of them were all saying very loudly, happy birthday, Emmy. And there's the smile was Disney, how to scale that personalization of experience and create real magical moments for their customers.
Yeah. And I think that's so good, because when we have, I suppose, life experiences, that putting them out there and learning the lessons from them. And I would do that on a regular basis. I would look and say things that people are doing, and I'd say, okay, I'm not going to copy them, but what I am going to use is I'm going to use the sort of the format that they're doing these things in. Like I looked at, I think it was, I think Kim Garst done a particular way of the way she automated and she put out a load of emails together. But I just, instead of actually just copying what you did, I looked at the format and I says, this is really, really incredible. And then sharing that out and sort of putting your own take on it. I see in places, okay, but maybe that mightn't work for me to a certain degree, but there is other elements. And I think that's so important that we also look at, as you say, the experience of how people can interact and how they can actually build on that. I think that's amazing. And that's the thing that I've always loved about. I'm not trying to big you up here, but I will say that's the thing I've always loved about your newsletters. They're very straightforward, but they give a message. They explain something, and they give your take on it. And like, it's like and I've always said it about blogging and anything to do with content. It's the person's choice of how they interpret the message. And I think that's so important. But if you have the basis for what you're talking about and on the understanding, people will take their own message out of it. I only seen a thing there actually on Facebook before we came on with Todd Giantasio. He was talking about spamming. People were spamming on LinkedIn, and he went back and he talked to one particular guy, and they said something else, and he came back with it, and it was a really, really good post. I'll share it on this live later on and the comments, and let people can see it. But it was a really good way, a smart way of talking back and answering and getting the best out of a situation. From a negative to a positive back to the net. You know what I mean? So I think that's really good. Don Harris had a question there. He says, just wondering what Alan, well, I assume it's Mike he's talking, considers is acceptable balance between a regular blog presence or too much, risking overkill. Thank you. So I think that's...
Well, if you want me to take a stab at that, I would say there is no such thing as overkill when it comes to blog content. Your audience is not paying any attention to how often you publish. They just aren't. So unless it's emails, that's different. But if you're just publishing articles to your website, nobody's counting. Nobody else is keeping track. That's just between you and whoever else is on your staff. So then it becomes a matter of resources. How much time do you have available to write? And what are your end goals? This is a common question I get from people is, how often should I publish a blog post? And they're usually asking because they want to know the minimum, right? What's the minimum amount that I can publish? What's the minimum amount I can write? And what's the least often I can publish? Because they want to achieve the minimum. And the question they need to answer is, well, how soon do you want to achieve success? And what does that look like for your blog and for your business? For most of us, that means getting good search engine traffic and getting the kind of traffic that is going to convert into a business goal, whether that's picking up the phone and calling you to hire you, or buying whatever it is you're selling to your site, or subscribing. I mean, those are typical business goals. Well, HubSpot did a survey. This has been a couple years now, and they looked at a bunch of different companies that had been creating content, and they looked at how often they were publishing content, how long it took them to publish X amount of posts, and at what point in that timeline did they begin to see exponential increases in search traffic. Because every time you publish, you're going to get a little bit more search traffic. But if you're starting from zero, it's going to be a little bit. But at some point down the road, Google will finally kind of open the floodgates, because now you've established authority. At what point is that? About 50 blog posts.
Yeah.
So if you're starting from nothing and you're going to publish, let's say, once a week, which is kind of the norm for most businesses, it's going to take you a year on average before you begin to see that kind of exponential growth, that kind of success that we'd all be looking for and hoping for. So I kind of answered that question a couple different ways from Don, but like I said, there is no such thing as overkill, but there is this idea that we need to decide for ourselves what we want to accomplish and how much work we're going to put into it to get there.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And people say, oh, like, how many blog posts should I do a week, or how many should I do a month? And my answer, and I'd love to know what you think, is like, I think you've answered there, is whether it's one a week or whatever. But I just say, look, it's if you have information, or you have a blog post that you feel that is of benefit, put it out there. It's, as you say, like, people aren't consuming your content and say, oh, here's the next great blog post. They will come across it, because we all live busy lives. So, and that's the thing about it. And I suppose it's repurposing as well your content that you can use in many different formats.
Absolutely. So, we're doing a 30-minute interview right here. And if you were to take all the text that I'm speaking, that's probably going to be 3,000 to 5,000 words. That's a massive piece of content, right? If you interview somebody for an hour, that's probably 10,000 words in that particular piece of content, which you could then break that up into several different articles. So one of the really smart techniques for small business owners today is to interview their peers in whatever industry you're in. I don't care if you're a real estate agent or a plumber. Interview your peers, partner businesses in your area, and create that body of relevant work and repurpose it into blog content. And when you do that, you can dump it all at once. You can publish 10 blog posts in a day. I used to do that. I used to write anywhere from 10 to 14 articles a week. So there would be several days where I'd publish 2 or 3 articles a day. I wasn't emailing each one of those individually, because that would be spam. But the publishing is fine. Publish as much as you want. One of the concepts I teach is this idea, this construct of content pyramids. Now, this is just in our mind. We're not building anything on our website. But if you want to rank for something really, really badly, if you determine through research that there's a particular keyword phrase that's very relevant to your business, like for me, it's how to start a blog. So that's a phrase that's really important to me for bloggingbrute.com. It's one that I'm working on ranking. I would love to be the #1 search result for how to start a blog. So to do that, you need to create a lot of content. You're not going to rank #1 for a good search phrase with one piece of content. There's different formats and different constructs. Some people talk about silos. Some people talk about skyscrapers. I like the pyramid idea, where you've got one piece of content at the top of that pyramid, and then as the triangle gets larger, you've got additional layers of content. I usually have like 3 subtopics and then 3 blog posts for each of those subtopics, creating in total 12 or 13 pieces of content. And from a search perspective, you can publish them one at a time, week after week, month after month, or you could just write it all out over the course of a week and just bang out all this content and drop it on Monday. Search engines don't care.
Yeah, I think that's fabulous to be able to break it down. I can see that. I can actually see that in my own head. I'm actually going, I think I'll be using that, because I think it's, as you say, like that pyramid, just to be able to break it down into, and then, as you say, subsections is really good, because, and then again, you have the other side of that then is where the subsections then become the pyramid head to the next ones, and they just keep layering and layering out. And I think that is, something that is really, really vitally important to understand before you even put, I suppose, pen to paper. It's like when I teach podcasting, I always say, the easiest part of podcast is opening the microphone. It's the stuff that goes on before it and the stuff that goes on after it is where the work is, but and when people understand that, they actually go, oh, right, I get it now. Don said, thanks very much. He said, great information. Mike, thank you. Very helpful. We have Evelyn Peppard calling in from County Limerick, which is down here in Ireland as well. And then we also have Seamus. Greetings from Cork, Mike. Very insightful. Thank you. Interesting to know that there is no such thing as overkill. And David Brown, who is the WordPress guy, said brilliant advice. He does a lot of WordPress stuff, so do check David out as well. And then Evan said sound advice. Thanks, Mike. So some really great comments. We didn't get to speak about your book, but The Ultimate Guide to Social Media Marketing. I've read it from cover to cover, and each section is just absolutely incredible. And I know it's available on. Let me see. I did put a banner there too. So we put it up there. The Ultimate Guide. So it's available on socialmediabooks.shop and also on Amazon as well. But you have wrote that with good friends of ours, Jen Herman, Stephanie Liu, Amanda, and also Eric as well. And each piece is just so valuable. It's incredible. How is the book going? I presume, I know when you launched it, it was absolutely flying, because everywhere we went, it was just doing so well. So it's a really good book. Might give a quick sort of, I suppose, synopsis on what it's about.
Yeah, that was a super fun collaborative project. Jen, Stephanie, and Amanda and I, we formed the 360 Marketing Squad. Jen had worked with Eric Buteau on the Instagram for Dummies series, and he had contacts with Entrepreneur Press. So this is published by entrepreneur.com. And so the five of us, I got to tell you, if you're going to write a book, this is one way to do it. This is a really good way to do it, because it wasn't on just one person to write the entire book. We got to spread it out and divide it up. Eric is super good at research, things that not a lot of us like to do. So he was in charge of researching things like all the image dimensions and requirements for Facebook and TikTok and so on. Whereas I talked about influencer marketing, and Stephanie talked about live video and images and so on. And Amanda talked about ads and chatbots, and we divided it up in ways that made sense to us, and we were able to tackle the project really efficiently. We wrote the book in about 3 months.
Wow.
I want to say I think it was August, September 2019 that we finalized the outline and we signed the contracts, and the manuscript was due by January 1 of 2020. So yeah, by January of last year, the book was done. It was written. Came out in August because it takes them a long time to typeset and edit and all that sort of thing. But it was interesting. It went really, really well. It was different than expected, because when we delivered the manuscript on January 1st of last year, we obviously were expecting to do book signings and live events and all the kinds of things you do with a traditional book launch. And by March, all that was off the table. So we're still hoping, maybe later this year, maybe next year, to kind of do a second launch and do all the things that we would have done last year anyways. But it was still a fantastic project.
Oh yeah, and there's no reason why you can't do that, but I would say to people, definitely go and buy the book. It is phenomenal, and it really is. And I can't speak highly enough of it. And of course, obviously, your podcast, incredible. Do check it out. And then also your socialmediahat.com is the website, blogandbrute.com, and everything else as well. Along with that, Agorapulse. Mike, I actually don't know when you sleep. There's so much going on.
Well, this cannot be overstated. I think one of my superpowers is that I really am comfortable. I really only need 6 hours of sleep. That's a huge benefit, to people who need 8-9 hours of sleep every single night. That gives me 2 or 3 extra hours per day
Mm.
that maybe other people don't have. So that's actually a good point.
Yeah, well, it's true, and I'm similar. I would be like a lot of the people I'd be talking to would be in the States and they'd be on at night. So like it could be 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be talking. They'd say, "Are you not gone to bed?" And I go, "No, not really." So it's just it is the way we are, I suppose. But Mike, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I know we had to reschedule. That was beyond circumstance, beyond our control, and whatever. But it's been well worth the wait, and it's well worth having you here. It's you're always a fountain of information, and you're just a really nice guy, and I thank you so much for coming on.
Well, I thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and sit with a friend and talk for half an hour or so and talk about things that I really like to talk about. I like to talk about blogging. So thank you.
Brilliant stuff. And if people want to reach out and connect with you, how can they get in contact?
I'm Blogging Brute everywhere. That's usually the easiest place to start. It's one of the reasons why I chose that particular name. The domain name and all the handles were available. So Blogging Brute.
Brilliant stuff. Well, Mike, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us today. And we are going to leave it there for today. So thanks again, Mike. Pleasure talking to you. So I'm just going to, this is the fun part where I have to change a brand and get rid of backgrounds. There we go. So guys, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for all your great comments, and my thanks so much to Mike Allton for coming on. And as I said, make sure to check out all of his websites, the socialmediahat.com, bloggingbrute.com, and also reach out and connect with him across all the social networks as well. I've been Alan Hennessy from Compass Media. Do hope you enjoyed the show. We should be back next week, and my guest next week will be Mr. Colin O'Brien from Wigwam, and that will be out at 12 o'clock next Tuesday. So do check that out. So until next time, if you do want to get in contact with me, it's Alan at Compass Media by email. You'll also find me across all the social networks, and all else fails, go to the website compassmedia.ie and also alan-hennessy.com as well. It's a pleasure as always to have your company, and we shall see you soon. And all I can say is take care, and what I always say, be social. Until next time, bye-bye.